So here we go. In 2024, the number one point of sale data challenge that faces suppliers is the time it takes to collect and analyze their results each week.
Mm-hmm. I mean, not even surprising, right? I mean, let's just say you have 10 customers. Let's say you have 20 customers, and each one has a different category name, or has a different column, or has a different metric. I mean, I know everyone struggles with that, but at the end of the day, it's really our responsibility to kind of help set that stage to what are those uniform, columns, and what are those uniform things, what should they look like? And I know what we struggled with, even in the big organizations, was you could work with a Kroger, you could work with a Publix, you could work with a mass like Walmart or Target, and even Amazon, and they were very much different. But at the end of the day, they still wanted to know how many widgets went across and what was the cost of it. And so, to me, I think this is it's really important to make sure you do it right. But having tools, for instance, like some of the tools that you guys have to help collect and cleanse that, really, really important. And then having that dedicated team that can not only download the information and look at it, but understand if there's something wrong with it. Yeah. Because you can have all the data scientists that you want in the world, and even with big companies, they would put big budgets to the data scientists. They didn't necessarily know if there was an issue with the numbers. They were good at putting it into the right formats. But then if there was a glitch in something, or like something looked weird, they may not understand that. So really having that person, having that right tool, and then having that right person who can decipher it and say, this number has never been negative. Why would it all of a sudden be negative all of a sudden, right? So, I think uniformity, having great tools that are usually not very expensive to help you do that.
No, and I'm with you. Like the data formatting, as consumers of data, if you're just getting that generated Power BI dashboard each week, or some Excel file where you get all your retailer data at a high level, or by product or something in an Excel file, like I said, that you have no idea how long it took that person to collect and cleanse that data, and move stock on order into the right column, or rename columns based on how your 3 or 4 or 5 different retailers name those. And to your point, some will give you stock in transit to the stores. Other retailers don't give you stock in transit. Some won't even give you stock on order. Heck, I know you did some work with Best Buy in the past, and they'll basically tell you units sold and inventory, and that's about it in their EDI file. Like it's not a robust situation, but you still need to be able to blend it all together and give someone in the company a pulse of, what happened at retail last week. So I'm not surprised by this. At the same token, I've been fixing this for almost 7 years.
Yeah.
And my conversion rate is still very low. So although it is their number one problem, the person who's trying to fix the problem doesn't have the power to fix it.
Yeah.
So until they get a little bit more vocal and go upstream and go, hey, if you fix this for me, I'd have 6 hours, 8 hours, 2 days more to actually analyze the data each week, they'd be in good shape.
And without spoiler alert of the other 4, without this is one of the easiest ones to fix.
Yeah.
This is really, there are a lot of organizations that have some pretty easy tools to do it. But even beyond that, just setting your objectives on, hey, at the end of the day, maybe we're going to be simple. And this is actually when back in the mid to late 90s, when we were just kind of doing this, at Kraft. I mean, it was just, hey, let's just pull units and dollars, and then inventory. And those 3 things gave me almost everything I need. Units divided by dollars gives me price. I understand, and then my inventory. And then so I know what my rate of sales and all that is. So sometimes it's just starting easy. And then once the organization maybe sees the advantages of doing that, then start thinking about budgets to kind of help make that a lot easier. But really, you don't need a lot of that stuff. I mean, in the beginning stages, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I talked to someone yesterday who's still doing what you were doing in the mid 90s, which for them, based on the size of their company, it's a good effort.
Yeah.
Right there. And then they color code which ones have not enough stock and try and call those stores to get an order through the system to fill it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're actually using the data in an effective way, and it was a nice attempt of of using the data that they're given to help grow the business. Now they're only
Yeah.
in one retailer, which makes life a little easier. Um, but at the same token, they are leveraging the data to help grow the business, and they always have it in their back pocket when the retailer says, "Hey, why did you do this?" You can just go, "Hey, look at this."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. All right. Let's move along to number
All
two.
right. No, too.
See, this is why I love your perspective, because in your roles, you've had this role, you've worked in companies that have people in this role. Yet in my world, I still got key account managers, national account managers that are trying to go into, target partners online or vendor drill or
Right.
VPP from Lowe's, and they're spending hours each week downloading the data and trying to clean it like in number one, and then now they got to do something from this Excel sheet.
Yeah. It's what I call kind of like information overload for someone who's not, kind of trained in that world. And again, the new world is, data scientists and kind of tools that kind of help do some of this, but really having that dedicated person um, um, that's tied to the hip with sales and or marketing and or category management or whatever that is. And I've been in big companies where you have very large category management departments that did this. And I was also with small ones where, but it was an analyst to kind of do that work. Here's the key, by having dedicated members do it, that person actually becomes your best sales guy sometimes because they not only know the business from the SKU level up because they've been doing that work, they understand what's working, what's not working, what's selling, what's not, this color, this day, this week, all that stuff they understand. So they actually become great partners for future jobs. In fact, that was kind of a big craft experiment back in the late 90s was they hired a lot of college students to become analysts. That role became an internship, and then they went on to become sales reps and other type jobs. And then they came back to category management. So it's to me that investment is actually pretty inexpensive also because it's a great ground level job. But
Yeah.
your sales guy needs to go sell, your marketing guy needs to go do the marketing, and your analyst guy needs to be kind of that support behind it. Having someone try to do those, very difficult, very difficult.
Yeah, and we've seen an influx of data analyst jobs opening up at suppliers. Again, Kraft was in the 90s. Our houseware and hardware and many other suppliers are still operating like it's the 90s in their sector, and they're just catching up and hiring their first analyst, and they think that's the answer. We'll hire an analyst. Now, the analyst, though, to your point, I think their role is expanding because some of the sales folks aren't as data savvy or as tech savvy as they likely should be in the future, but they're leveraging the analysts in these sales meetings, taking them to the retailer line reviews,
Yeah.
and helping them tell the story of what's gone on in their business this year and where they think their business is going. They're
Yeah,
playing a more important role in the business for certain.
yeah, it's what I'm doing now. I mean, I'm doing analytical work for people because they don't have that capability. And then when we're showing them how to utilize that data. So, hey, it's working for me. So like if you need a guy, if you know a guy, so
And to your point, it has to go beyond, hey, we're up 5% this week. I feel pretty good. Like you need to get deeper into the data, find some
yeah,
actionable insights. And I would say 10% of the sales reps out there or national account managers, whatever we want to call them, are into it. And the
yeah.
other ones are still interested in, am I up 5% or down 5%, and aren't looking for some really easy growth opportunities.
Yeah.
So that's,
And I think it goes if you go to three. I think it actually ties in with number three, which is not having the right information or just all this jargon, right? And so having someone to kind of curtail, that information so it's user friendly. And just because you get all this data doesn't mean you need to present all this data. You want to have it because my discussion with a account manager and a marketer and a CEO is probably a little bit different. I always had a boss that would say, "You're in an elevator and you're going down, and they're going to ask you how's business, and what's your 30-second, 40-second speech of like tell them how the business is. Oh, my business is doing blah 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 blah." And my first couple of times doing that, I remember my boss saying, "Well, how big is your building? You think it's like 20 floors? Like, man, you talk too long. Remember, those key salient points. And so that's why all that data is one click is for this guy, one click is for this guy, and one click is for this guy. It's the old adage of I'll build you 10 slides so I can get you to one slide.
Yeah.
But that's why, number one, with having the right data set so that you don't have the incomplete data, because it gives you that chance to kind of give them, beyond just sales. And especially when you get into store level and supply chain. I mean, oh my gosh, it's, we had that discussion yesterday about like this item was not selling in all stores and no one knew it. And it's like, well, my sales are down. Why are they down? I don't know. Well, then you look at the stores and the stores say all of a sudden you were doing 1 or 2 or 3 per store per week. Now you're doing 0 in 20 stores, which represent 40% of the stores. Like, how do you tell that story, And usually it's not believed. A lot of the times, like, I'm not sure I believe that. It's like, well, here's the problem. They stopped ordering it in those stores, big issue. So
Yeah.
I think having someone to comb through that, is definitely helpful, and to be able to articulate it, as that anyone can understand.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite subjects. Just asking the question, let's see if you're in every store that you think you're in.
Right.
Because generally people say, hey, we're in, the people I talk to, suppliers I talk to, we're in great shape. And I'm like, well, let's just see if you're in every store you think you're in. Because the data is incomplete. Sometimes it's missing cells on purpose, where if they suppress zeros in the data and aren't going to send you any data where, your rate of sale is 0, your inventory is 0, there's nothing on order. They just drop it from the data file because no one wants to get 50,000 rows of zeros.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
because of this, which leads you to like number 4, right? I mean, because if you're not doing that right, then all of a sudden you may have out of stocks or they're not ordering. So when it's like, well, what are those specific recommendations that kind of like a retail buyer wants? I mean, to me, like, well, first of all, like what walking in there's like, well, what's really important to them? Well, it's gross sales. It's probably profitability. It's probably turns. It's probably inventory dollars. It's probably GMROI, whoever you talk to. I mean, so first off, like, know that in the back of the mind, that's what's important to those guys. Not for you to say, hey, item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is up 5% over prior year, and it's selling because it's a green box and does really well on Tuesdays. Well, that's great information, but that hasn't solved his GMROI problem, right? So thinking about like how you curtail that data, especially if there's things not going well. And one of the things, I think we used to use, quite considerably, even if you're comparing multi-retailer data, you're not sharing that other person's data, but you're saying, hey, we know in other accounts in our business that these segments or these sub-segments are doing better, that are also in your backyard. Hey, retailer A, you got these 5 other grocery and mass channels near you. They're doing really well here because of people are upgrading the size or the flavor or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's what keeps a retailer up at night. It's like, why aren't I converting sales? Why aren't I selling my category to the degree of the guy down the street?
Yeah, it's all relative. Like performance is all relative to something.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say, look, you think, my tool brings all your retailer data together on one screen. So you can see if one retailer's up 10%, you think you're doing pretty good. But if everyone else is up 15%, your 10% all of a sudden doesn't look as great as it did if you isolated and looked at its results on its own.
Yeah, I mean, you actually could say, I'm down 5%, but the whole category is down 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not doing too bad.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with the category, right? What's going on in the category piece, or maybe you own the category, right? But there's 3 or 4 items that are doing well. Well, how are they doing versus other retailers that you may control? Again, not giving that information to them, but you're saying, here's the trends we're seeing. That's what that buyer wants to know. He doesn't have a guy coming in from his competitor saying, hey, I'm doing really well at this. He walks the store to see that. And so that's the advantage of having multiple accounts, having multiple areas. You're giving that buyer what they want. I mean, the best world scenario that we had, and again, whether it was small or large companies I was working with, was the buyer knowing that you always came with really solid things to help them make some planogram transition stories. And they would call you like, hey, I'm going into this meeting and I have to compete with space for, with this and this and this guy. can you help me understand some globally things that are kind of going on that'll allow me, hey, more space, because more space for his category means more space for your products. And so again, thinking about that buyer is not just about your item, but it's about your brand and it's about your category. And that is quite, again, that's data that you have. That's data. And you can have all the category stuff, but you get it.
Yeah. Well, I would say too, like if you get a 25,000 row Excel file from your analyst every week because that's what you're stuck with using Excel, I don't know how you get any actions out of that, whether it's 500 lines, 200 lines, or 20,000 lines. I still don't know how anyone would figure out, oh my God, I'm going to call this store because they've been sitting on 400 of my units for 12 weeks and I haven't sold any.
Right. Exception reporting, right? I mean, it's like, so what do you do with all that? And again, what's important to them? I mean, that person doesn't want to know that, hey, 50% of my stores have a missing tag, or maybe in the example that we talked about yesterday, that maybe it got called off of like one size of the planogram, and no one knew it, or just didn't think about it. It was by a pole or, whatever that is. Again, that one space, that one little hole is the case that made you buy the pallet, which made you buy the truck, and it just keeps, hey, that was 3 weeks of stuff. Well, what if this was 8 weeks times 10 stores times a year? I mean, that's just, again, going back to, that's lost sales.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Which again, just kind of parlays from that into this, which is like, if you can't bring your buyer something in an actionable format, it's probably because you can't figure out what to focus on.
Yeah.
Because if you knew what to focus on, you could take your buyer a weekly ask, a monthly ask. Like you got to pick your spot depending on, your importance in that category. Are you a leader or follower? Are you an add-on item? Are you the main item?
Yeah.
But you got to know what to focus on each week. And I think if you're not looking at your retailer data on a weekly basis at a minimum, you kind of lose the pulse of what you should be doing next. And I often wonder when the account managers get in on Monday, the first thing I would want to know, maybe I have a biased opinion, is like, how did I do at retail last week? So is my Best Buy buyer going to call me on Monday happy, or are they going to call me with a bit of a challenge that we got to solve? And at least by figuring out what's happening in the business and understanding where we should focus our time and energy, you're on your front foot versus your back foot trying to wonder what you're going to do next.
Yeah, I think you get the basics right first. So that is, just basic kind of weekly, monthly, quarterly kind of reporting so that you have a good understanding of the business. And then you have times during the year that you're thinking about, well, what's the white space? What are those areas that there are retailers or competitors or departments in their store or in a competitor store that's doing better based on other things that and then thinking about honing in on what is the one issue that you've kind of constantly see maybe over a month period, like over the last 4 weeks when this is a high historical sale area, what happened that was different? And do we start making plans on that? And then those are things that you bring to them. And then the next month, it may be something different, or it's an add-on on that. I think the short term is having the right reporting. The midterm is, as things are going on through the year, what are those 2 or 3 things that are objectives that you both have as a responsible vendor for them. And then the last is like, hey, start thinking about strategically, maybe a year down the road, maybe even 2 years down the road. These are things that we know that we want that category to probably do. Are there things in the marketplace that are kind of happening? So you kind of have a short and long-term perspective of it. And again, it doesn't matter how big you are. Anyone can go walk a store. You can go walk a store and find out a lot of this stuff too. Your data just kind of helps you, put maybe some numbers behind it. And again, it doesn't have to be specifics, but certainly numbers that generate and give someone a perspective of what's that scale, right? Yeah. And how do we benchmark against that?
Yeah, absolutely. Can't go see every store, but you can go see a handful for sure.
Yeah.
Nothing like a good store walk to get a really good idea about what's going on in your business, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So
good challenges, man. Good challenges.
we're through these five, and the one thing I wanted to let you know, because I'm not sure if we covered this in our pre-chat, is I think there's an evolution in the sense that more suppliers are bringing in some data analytic tools. I'd say primarily Power BI more than any of them.
Yeah.
And they're hiring a data analyst to help collect all this data, or it sits with IT. And this is why we have seen the time it takes rise to number one, the lack of a dedicated team member. Because even though you have the data, you still need to understand what the data is telling you.
Yeah.
And that's not as easy as it sounds. And missing incomplete or incorrect data for the first time in our 5 years of doing this study, that is the first time that has ever made the list. So number one, number two, and number three are new to the list this year.
Wow.
Number four and number five have always been on the list. So what it's telling me is that more people are trying to attempt to bring in some type of data analytics tool, whether it's across the business or maybe something specific for their point of sale data. And they're quickly realizing like this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. It's a heavier lift because retailer data is not always clean. You need someone who really knows what they're doing. And it takes time and energy and sometimes some technology just to gather all that retailer data. If you're in, I'm talking to someone right now who's in 15 different retailers. So the time it would take for someone to download 15 reports every week or collect them, and then what, whether it's put them all into Excel or Power BI or whatever, it still takes time to clean, ingest, and format all that data before you can even use it.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, get one right.
Yes. Yeah.
Start with one and then you move to two. I mean, you can't, these big companies that have all these resources and tools and all that, they started with nothing. I mean, when the first Nielsen reports were starting to come out back in the early 90s, they were all on paper. They weren't on the computer. It was like a 3-inch deck of gibberish. And I can tell you what the sales guy told me. He's like, I can't read any of this. What do you make of it? I said,
yeah.
I'm barely out of college. I don't even have a business degree. Like, what do you want me to read this thing for? So I mean, they started in the same boat, and they just saw the power of it. They saw the power of how it helps sales. They saw the power of how it helps the category, and they saw the power how it builds that relationship. Because at the end of the day, size helps in leveraging at some point, but insights and knowledge helps drive the point home that you can be a trusted and reliable and credible person with the data.
Yeah. 100%. All I ever say is you're just building trust with your retailers so that when you do send them a request, after you continue to chip away at the trust factor, those just go, oh yeah, Russ sent this to me. Let's just process this. Go do that. Yeah. I'm not even going to look at it. It'll be okay.
Yeah, you get line away. You get to the front of the line pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly. So I just put this slide up, and it just is a history of where some of the other point of sale data challenges have landed. And if you look at defining the value of lost sales due to out of stocks went from number one last year to not even making the top 5 lists this year, which tells us some of the supply chain problems are likely gone, so they're not as worried about not having product in stock. Figuring out what to focus on each week's always been in at number 3, 4, or 5, and there's still some data management pieces in there, like managing all the file formats into one consolidated file, which is a little bit about, I think, what we saw in the time factor. That's number one this year. The time it takes to bring all the data together probably has a similar tone to the managing all the different file formats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's awesome. Look, before we go today, I do want to, thank you for your time. We could do this all day long. Our 20 minutes is sitting here at like 35 right now, so it's perfect. But we never have a short conversation. We always have a good conversation. And I do want you to let everyone know about your business, what you do. They can tell from our time together that there's no one out there that knows category management and retail better than you. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing at Catman Analytics and plug the business.
It's almost everything that you just said. Me, one guy. Our group is a group of dedicated analytical thinkers that go from, we can be your analyst, we can be your category management strategist, we can be your insight driver, we can build scorecards, we can do planogram work. I mean, we can do a whole host of things to help, through the spectrum that you happen to be. I have about 5 or 6 clients that I'm working with right now that I'm all across there. I'm doing category management 101, teaching their people how I would organize a category management department, how I would do reporting. I'm building scorecards for people. We're doing analytics for people. And then we're just doing like category reviews and stuff like that. So some of the back end stuff that you just don't have that resource and you need some part-time kind of work, we're doing that. And, over the last year, I think the last time we talked, I had like 0 people that I was working with. And now we're up 5 or 6 now. And so, because there's a view that like, we really need that part. So 30 years of doing this across CPG, OTC, and consumer electronics across every customer you can think of. And love doing it. And, hey, if you need some help or you just need some advice or just thoughts, give us a call. We take long-term, short-term. We just have discussions too, to be honest, most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure they send us LinkedIn invites, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You may get a surf report. I mean, you never know. I mean, it's all in there. So.
Well, that is awesome. And of course, anyone who's watching this can contact me to get the Russ. There's my email address. You can watch and listen to this episode again on my YouTube channel. You can listen. You'll be able to listen this weekend on your podcast, your favorite podcast app, when you look for the Point of Sale Data Minute. But most importantly, Russ, I just want to thank you for your time today. And it's always a great conversation. Yeah. I feel like you should be a guest on every show. Add some certain knowledge that is missing, and everyone will value, and it's always a good conversation. So appreciate you hanging out with us. We're gonna come in under the 40-minute mark, which was the goal today. Even though I always earmark just 20 minutes for this, we never can get it all in 20.
Thanks for your time. Hey, thanks for challenging me too. I mean, I love getting this stuff out there, and it's kind of hard. It's hard to find that right platform to do it, and you have a perfect platform to do it. And to be honest with you, I think we're a nice 1-2 punch that, you have a great tool and we have great analytics. And to me, it really clearly shows that like, we're not specified in these one little areas, that together really kind of helps drive, any business that someone may have. So,
yeah, I mean, I think what I do at Crunchbox is help provide the base layer for the rest of the build on, but you got to start somewhere. You got to get a really good pulse of what you're doing at retail before you can even figure out many other aspects of your business, marketing, supply chain.
Yeah.
Better return on inventory capital never hurt anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Cool, man. Thank you
for your time. Thanks for your time. All right.
Yes, sir. All right. Bye.
Yeah. Everyone, thanks for watching another episode of the Point of Sale Data Minute. It was an interesting way to kick this one off with episode 1 jumping in at the start. But we finally got there. We got there in under 40 minutes. We had a great time. I had a great time chatting with Russ. You can tell this guy knows so much about product, retail, category management. If your company's in a need for better insights, information, and to really help build those retailer relationships with a depth of knowledge that you might be missing, I'd reach out to him in a heartbeat. He's at Catman Analytics. I'm Doug at Crunchbox. Thanks for watching another episode of the Point of Sale Data Minute, and we'll catch you.